Hi, I'm Dean Crisp. Welcome to Straight Talk on Leadership. This is what we'd like to say is the no BS zone, where we give you leadership tips, ideas, and practical suggestions to help you become a top leadership performer. Our goal is simple: help you become the best version of yourself and reach your highest potential as a leader. So sit back, turn up the volume, get ready to change your life. Hey everybody, Dean Crisp back in the studio. As we promised, I got JP Harvey with me here, captain with the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Hey JP.
Hey, good morning.
Well, we're glad to have you, my friend. I'm sure the weather down there is a little better than the weather where I am. It's a balmy 26 outside, and but it's sun shining. So what about where you are?
Well, down here in South Florida, we have a cold front approaching. So it's in the low 70s. We're supposed to get down in the 50s. This is when everybody from everywhere besides South Florida makes fun of us because everyone's wearing their Uggs and fur ski jackets, and it's 60 degrees out. But the swimming pool is heated. Palm trees are still swaying in the sunshine, so we're good.
Okay, so you just made most of us want to be down there with you for sure. But I appreciate you, JP. You and I go a long ways back. You do a lot of teaching for us, and you and I have kind of have this relationship, mentor, mentee, mentor kind of thing going on. And I've known you
Absolutely.
for a number of years, and I've watched you do your work, and I've also watched you in the classroom, and I've watched you teach. So I know you really well, and I know your heart, and I'm really glad to have you this week on our podcast. And we're glad to get this podcast kicked back off. It's number 146. Now, I always say when I say 146, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've actually done that many. But it's crazy to have that much content. But what's more important, it's crazy to have that much fun. I always love doing these podcasts, love having these conversations back and forth about leadership. So I'm so thankful for you to join us today. But before we get started, let's talk about a couple of things. Hey, my book just released yesterday, 5 Simple Truths of Leadership. If you haven't picked up a copy, it's on Amazon. It's about the 5 simple things that I believe that if you are a leader are going to make your life 100% better. No matter what, it's truths are kind of crazy. If you don't like them, they're still true. If you don't want to do them, they're still true. No matter what, they're truths. So these 5 simple truths have really helped me change my life. Hope you pick up a copy. If you haven't been in one of our classes, go to lhln.org and just simply sign up. We've got them all around the country. And if you'd like to bring one to your location, to your organization, to your department, just go to lhln.org, click that interested in a class thing, and man, we'll come there. So JP, good to have you, my friend. And Mojo, let's go right into the podcast. When I talk about Mojo, a lot of people, they're not really sure what Mojo is. What do you think it is?
Well, I think you could explain it a couple of different ways. I would start off with it. It's certainly relevant and connected to motivation, but I think it goes deeper than that as well.
And it's interesting about Mojo. Why do people think that Mojo is important? Because I have seen people walking around who don't have it, and it's very clear they don't have it. I have
Right.
seen leaders walk around with it, and it's very clear they have it. And it's kind of funny. Marshall Goldsmith, who is really a good writer, he's also a professional coach, a mentor to many people, has made a living at this. He wrote a book called Mojo, How to Get It, How to Keep It, and if you lose it, how to get it back. And some of the things I'm going to use today come right from his book in terms of what is Mojo, what's it look like, and why is it important. Well, I know me in my personal and professional life, if I feel like, and I feel confident, and I feel like that I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, I understand what it takes to get there, I think that's when I have my mojo. And Marshall Goldsmith, he kind of describes it as 3 things. He says, mojo is when you're doing something purposeful, powerful, and positive. And I thought, man, that is so true. Like when I'm working on something that is purposeful, powerful, and positive, then I have a tendency to be not only a lot more confident, but people around me kind of understand it and they can feel it. Do you get that vibe?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the energy that you put out, people feel you're going to either attract or push people away with that energy. But to complement what you're saying too, I think there's also a correlation. Not only is it just motivation, but it's confidence, and it is that a lot of times that confidence comes from having some success. But when someone doesn't have their mojo, you can tell that person too. That's the guy that looks like their dog just got hit by a car or something. You know,
Oh
they got
yeah.
their head down and the ho hum, and so definitely a difference between having it and not having it. And when you're talking about everyday things, whether you're at home with your family or you're in your professional setting at the department or at work, you know, people want to be around happy, positive people. And that comes from having your mojo. When you lose your mojo, it's kind of more difficult to, then you're just faking it till you make it, till you get it back, right?
Yeah, and I see it a lot of times in sports kind of situations where
Yeah.
this team is by far on paper 100% better than the team they might be playing. They're more talented, they have more experience, they've got people that know what they're doing. But when they go out, this new team they're playing or the team that's the underdog all of a sudden believes that they can beat them. They believe that I don't really care what it says on paper. I know what it's like to that we can win. And so they go out and just before you know it, they jump ahead of this team and that other team, the one that's supposed to win, if they lose their mojo, man, it's going to be a rout. And you see it all the
Yeah.
time in sports. It's like, so when you talk about teams that carry mojo, are there any teams that you think have like almost instant mojo? Like,
Well, 100%. And I think take a quick step back. We using the sports analogy, it's amazing how quick momentum can switch, how quick that mojo can change. Last night's game with the Texan Houstons and the Pittsburgh Steelers, pretty evenly matched. And then about halfway through the game, you really started seeing Pittsburgh almost self-destruct. They lost the momentum on a couple of key plays. Aaron Rodgers got hit a bunch of times, but then they lost their mojo, and it was they couldn't do a whole lot right after that. It just kind of snowballed. Uh, but yeah, when I think of teams, when you look at championship teams back in the day, as a Red Sox fan, I hate to say, but the New York Yankees always had that mojo. Uh, and as a Panthers fan in South Florida, the Panthers have been dealing with a lot of injuries this season, but back-to-back world champion, you got some mojo there. So yeah, there's some good examples of sports teams that have their mojo, and sometimes you can lose it pretty quickly.
and what I find interesting, you were talking about the Steelers game, and if you we're recording this right after the Steelers game that occurred last night. So, and also I didn't mention this earlier, but if you do want to watch us on our YouTube channel, you can see us live, actually in the studio talking. If that's the way you like to watch your podcast, you can watch us there. But I noticed last night that so let's take Aaron Rodgers. Here is a legendary quarterback. Here's a
Hall of
guy that's
Famer.
going to be first ballot Hall of Fame. So he goes and gets hit, or that if you watch the first play where his mojo really got hit, was when that tackle kind of had a swing and miss ghost move, where that guy just directly charged him and made him throw the ball on third down. He went over on the sidelines, and you could read his lips. He was raising. I can't repeat what he was saying, but he was just. You could tell that he was kicking the crap out of the players around him, and he said something interesting. He said, "Do your effing job." Now, that's a mojo killer for somebody who just knows that they missed. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so if you watched Aaron Rodgers the whole game, he never got his mojo back. You started seeing where he doubted, and that doubt absolutely took over that team last night. Now, I'm not saying that he's the sole reason, but what I am saying is that the leader can really be influential with whether they got their mojo or not. And thoughts on that?
No, 100%. I have to believe that anybody playing at that level in the NFL, they're trying their best. It's a playoff game. They want to win. When you go to the sideline and tell somebody to do your bleeping job, it kind of is a huge motivational kill because they're doing the best they can in all likelihood. I can't get in the guy's head, but and it reminds me coming back to the police side, to law enforcement side. even if you step up in front of people, if you're an informal leader, if you hold the rank of a supervisor, first line supervisor as a sergeant or higher, when you get in front of your people, if you don't have your mojo, how effective is your lineup going to be? How effective is that, impromptu leadership direction speech going to be? But if you're motivated, you're excited, you're passionate, and when you step out confident with that mojo, people really pick that up too.
You want to, I just thought about something that you were talking about, and I think this is one of the biggest mojo killers in law enforcement. Now, you tell me your thoughts on this, but this is what I think is one of the biggest mojo killers. When you have something that you're reading to your troops or presenting to your troops as a new policy, new idea, whatever it might be, and the first words out of your mouth is, the captain said, or the chief said, or the major said. That is a major mojo killer.
100%. And it's more than a mojo killer, but it's a mojo killer for several reasons. And first, start off with basics. When you're pushing out a directive, the truth of the matter is you've got to own it, and it's got to be yours. Because when you step in front of your people and you say, hey, I don't really like this either, but we got to do what the chief said. Sometimes we don't like everything we have to do. We'll just do it to the best of our ability. Two things happen. You're not going to get buy-in. You're going to get minimal effort from people because whether they believe in it or not, they're going to think that the general consensus is this is dumb. We shouldn't be doing it, but we have to anyway. Probably the bigger long-term effect that you're going to have on your people by doing that is you're giving away your authority. You're now saying that you don't have the authority to say what we're doing and what we're not doing, but you're going to give it away and put the blame on somebody else. But instead, if you took that bull by the horns and you said, hey, this is what we're going to do today, and then you do what we talk about in the classroom all the time, Dean, you start with why, going back to Simon Sinek, fundamental stuff here, but this is what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. Hopefully the people that you're working alongside and that you're leading will see the bigger picture in it. But what I think happens so often is that when people do that and they say, we got to do this because the chief said we have to do it, or, the major said we have to do it. I think what happens and what drives that is that leader doesn't know what the why is for the mission to begin with. So it'd be incumbent on them to ask those follow-up questions. And the truth is, you're not going to like every mission that you get told you have to do, but you just own it and you move on and you be the face of it. If it's good, if it's bad, don't give away your authority because that's going to come back later down the road to hurt you even more.
I mean, and that's a great point. And I do think that, so a lot of people ask me, they say, what do you do when you don't know the why? And I think that's an important point here, is that a lot of leaders should understand, if you want an inspired workplace, explain the why before they ask. And what that does is it kind of keeps mojo going, right? Like mojo flowing. And when you don't have that why, sometimes as a leader, you just have to be transparent and say, well, right now the why may be a little cloudy, and I don't know that I can tell you every single reason, but I do know that we are responsible for carrying out whatever edict or whatever rule, whatever regulation or whatever order this is, and we're going to do it to the best of our abilities, and we have to support it. That keeps mojo flowing. A lot of times, leaders are their own worst enemies because they do small things that before you know it will kill mojo of the people. Now, mojo, it's very difficult to define, but you know it when you got it and you know it when you don't. And there are a number of things that, I'm going to try to share with you to help you kind of keep your mojo. And there are a number of things that you have to consider when others are getting it. But I know this from my own personal life. There have been moments when I felt like I had zero mojo. Like, even with a reputation, even with being a chief for the number of years, even with whatever minimal success that I might have had in my own life, there have been moments where I literally felt like I didn't know if I could take another step forward or not. And those are terrible kind of feelings, and we all are going to go through those. But I do know that when I got my mojo back, it it made me, or it helped me take that next step. Most people don't realize that when you're in a position, when things fail, when things don't work, when things are not going the way you want them to go, it's not the 1,000-mile journey you got to worry about. It's just the next dang step. And Mojo will help you take that next step. And I know you've experienced something or things like that in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think in times when I've lost my mojo and I've lost that pep in my step, and there have been times in my professional career where if I'm really vulnerable and honest with people, it was more than just a day. I've gotten into some funks where maybe some of my expectations weren't being met. Some of my career goals didn't seem as attainable as they once did. What I found really beneficial was taking a step back and asking my own leadership why, and really becoming intentional. I kind of talking about this previously in a different setting in the classroom forced me to start thinking about this from a different perspective and paradigm. And what I've learned is whenever I've gotten out of step, whenever I've lost my mojo, it's because I've lost my intentionality. I haven't been intentional with what I've been doing. I haven't necessarily always gotten ahead of my day, if you will, to use your terminology. But what's helped me reset it is by getting intentional and getting back to basics with whether it's eating a little bit more cleanly, whether it's hitting the gym, but being intentional with setting short and long-term goals and getting refocused back to that sometimes has helped. But yeah, I've experienced probably more than my fair share of losing my mojo and having to find ways to get my motivation back, and to recapture the mojo and the narrative.
Yeah, and I think that we all are going to experience that. But I do think the more you have that mojo and the more you're operating, it's impossible to be this mojo maniac to where you're running around every single day and everything's great and wonderful. I mean, honestly, every single one of us, particularly if you work in law enforcement or if you work in leadership, you're just one phone call away from disaster, every minute. And, there are those small disasters. They don't have to be major disasters. It's just something didn't go as you want it to go is kind of a disastrous situation, and it can steal your mojo in a minute. So,
Sure.
so I think that I want to talk about for a minute some mojo killers that I think as leaders you can kind of understand when they're going to happen, and I think you can deal with those. And I've got some things that I want to share in terms that's helped me in my personal understanding of belief or my understanding of mojo to help me. So I think disappointment is one of the biggest mojo killers. And that doesn't have to be disappointment in the large things. That can be disappointment in small things. And I think that's pretty important for us to realize is it's not these big things that are going to kill us. It's these small things every day. It's 1,000 tiny cuts, right? And I don't know of a day that I have not gone through disappointment. Now, I've had, days that are more positive than negative, but I don't know of a single day in my life I've ever went through without disappointment. How about you?
Oh, probably more often than not. And it's almost like the bigger you set your expectations and your goals, there's going to be more let down. Listening to you speak, one thing just came crashing back to me, and it's a line that I actually stole from you, and I use it all the time. And that says, from a leadership perspective, we have to stop expecting that everything's going to be okay. It's not going to always be okay. Let's be honest. Life is hard. Life is full of disappointments and setbacks, trials and tribulations, if you will. But it's how you handle those that really affects whether you get your mojo back quickly or not. If everything was always okay, they wouldn't need us as bosses. We wouldn't need leadership the way that we do in law enforcement, but we're in place for when things aren't going as optimally as possible. That's where we have an opportunity to step up and make it better and shine.
Yeah, and I think mojo creates something that you said this earlier, and the more, what I'm going to talk about right now is an entirely whole podcast on itself, but there's a big difference between motivation and momentum. And most people defer that motivation is more important, but the reality is momentum's more important. And I think Mojo creates motivation that helps you create momentum, and they kind of work hand in hand. But disappointment comes to us a lot of times when we don't get what we want. Sometimes we have to realize that what we want may not be the best thing for us. Does that make
Amen.
sense?
Yeah, 100%.
Because I know in my own career that, as I fast forward my career, at the age of 33, I'm a police chief. Now, I wanted to be one. I was able to survive that and do 17 years as a chief, but I promise you that was a tough, tough go, especially at 33. And sometimes, you want something you're not equipped to handle. And I'll give you this as an example. The worst thing you could possibly ever do as a parent would be take a 16-year-old driver who is inexperienced and go buy them a souped-up sports car that'll do 140 miles an hour. Now, they're going to want it because of the way it's going to make them look and all those things, but the reality is they don't need it because it's going to lead to big problems down the road.
Sure.
And I mean, that's kind of a crazy example, but disappointment comes when we don't get what we want. And sometimes I think we have to step back from that and say, okay, I know I wanted that, but it wasn't my time. Was it my time to get that? So, I mean, thoughts on that?
No, I agree, and your example is not that far off for me because I got a son that's about to turn 15 and getting his permit. He's not getting the Corvette in the garage, I can promise you that. But yeah, in my own journey and in my professional and personal career, whether it be relationship-wise or at work, I mean, there's a reason there's a country song written about it. Thank God for unanswered prayers. I think we all agree at the end of the day, it usually shakes out the way that it's supposed to. It may not be in our time or the way we would have drawn it up, but at the end of the day, we end up crossing the finish line right where we're supposed to be. So, I've kind of referred back to that from time to time when I wish that things would happen.
Well, let's go back into that for a second. And I do think that you have to deal with what you want, what you don't want, right? And you have to understand sometimes you just don't need it.
I think why too. The question for me is when I've sat back and reflected, I get a lot of value out of asking myself, why is this as important to me as I think it is? And then sometimes I get some clarity that maybe it's not as important as I think it is in that moment. But that has only come from not getting some of the things that I wanted. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. And I think let's as we move on to what causes people to lose their mojo. The second thing I find is negative people. Like
sure.
Spending too much time with negative people. That is a mojo killer for me. Like
100%.
I can be so ready. That's one of the reasons why I love going to the gym in the morning is because we are all there and we're definitely not at the same level. There's some that, man, you look at them, you're like, God, good gracious, how do you get that, fit and buff and what? And, well, they do it because they spend a lot of time there. But there's one thing we all have in common. We're all trying to find our physical mojo in the gym. And that's what people have to understand about mojo. You got that, personal mojo, you got that physical mojo, you got that spirit mojo. I mean, all these things are mojos, right? And everybody's trying to get their physical mojo on. That's one of the things I like about Planet Fitness, the no judgment zone. You ain't got a bunch of people in there. And if you're one of these people, hey, God bless you and you're wonderful. You lift weights all the time. You go out there and you wear tank tops and little tighty-whitey shorts and you go and look in front of the mirror. Hey, if you're one of them, God bless you. You've worked your tail off to get there. But in Planet Fitness, you don't see those a lot because those people can be mojo killers for people who are just starting that workout. Does that make sense?
Sure.
So the less time I spend with negative people, the better my mojo is.
Well, when you go to the gym in the morning, everybody, what you all have in common, you're all at the gym. You've got that in common. It's people being intentional and making a decision to go do something that is going to benefit them in a healthy way. I love the saying, a quote, probably can't tie it to any one person, but show me your friends and I'll show you your future. It's amazing when you hang out with negative people, not only will they rob you of your mojo, but they'll also change your mindset. And the quickest way to reset that is get around positive people. You become the average of the 4 or 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. But negative people can swing a mojo in a second. And so you got to be careful of that. And I think another thing that certainly helps lose your mojo is overcommitting. I think a lot of times we overcommit to things when we know that just means we're going to do 10 things average instead of 3 things great. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times
Sure.
when you're overcommitted, you tend to there's just so much mojo to go around, right? And it's hard to be motivational on every single thing you're doing. So I
Right.
don't know if
No,
you
I agree
found
with
that to
that.
be true with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I spread myself too thin, not only do I lose my mojo, but I just don't have the energy necessarily to do everything at that high level that you're talking about. I would rather be really influential and do better in a couple of key areas than try to spread myself too thin because that, it related, not the same, but that will lead to burnout as well. You overextend yourself and then you feel that you're not being successful. That can start snowballing over into areas where you actually are being successful.
Yeah, and I think that's so true. And one of the last areas I'll talk about in terms of there are hundreds of mojo killers, and we're just spending time on these 3 or 4 here.
Yeah.
But one of the things is wishing things were better. That's a mojo killer. You know, I've said this. I don't remember who said it, but instead of wishing things were better, wish you were better. Wish that you could handle things better. Wish that you could deal with things better than what you're dealing with. Wish that you were out of your comfort zone to make things better. Don't just wish things were better. Make things better. And I think walking around wishing things were better, man, that's a mojo killer.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, there's things that you're in control of, and there's a lot of things that you're not in control of. But the one thing that you are in control of is yourself and what you do. And talking about, motivation isn't permanent. It's the daily grind. It's being consistent. It's you go to the gym when you don't feel like going to the gym. You're not going to get super fit by going that one day, but if you're consistent over time, you get great. And I think that a direct correlation to that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, we spent some time talking about like what are mojo killers, and let's talk about some things that can help you kind of shape your mojo. And I want to talk about this for a second because I see these a little bit differently than people do. So the first thing I want to talk about is you've got to establish strong values to keep mojo high. Now, when I say values, a lot of people, they don't turn their nose up, but they think they know what I'm talking about. So what is a value? Honesty, integrity, character. I mean, all those things are values. But I'm not talking about those type of values. Those are things that should be self-understood as a leader. Like one of the values that I believe in as a leader is don't give up. Like just have a value of no matter what happens, we might get setbacks, we might have problems, but don't give up. A second value that I have is be straight with people. Like have honest conversations. A lot of people don't see that as values. They see that more as maybe characteristics or skill sets or whatever it may be. But I think that is so strongly in my belief that when I look at a bad situation, I just know I'm not giving up. And I'm constantly trying to find. So what I say is develop strong value systems that create success. Like, and just make those your go-to of what you are. If you think about it for a second, we are what we are for 3 reasons. It's talent, skills, attributes. Those are things that are personal, but the reality is you've got to add a strong value system on top of that because with talent, skills, and attributes, if you're not basing it on the right things, it's destructive. And I think that's important for us to understand is what's that strong value system that you have? And it's like, one of mine is, we just simply are not going to let this kill us. We will move forward. That's a value system. So I don't know if you can speak to that, or what your thoughts on that.
I think it goes back to your own personal why statement as well. We talk about that a lot in the classroom, but it's definitely attributed to going back to reflecting on your value system. But I think part of the Mojo recovery just gets simply back to just being intentional, making a decision. First of all, recognizing that you've lost your mojo. That's incredibly important. And then deciding and making an intentional decision that you want to do something differently, okay, how are we going to switch gears here? And I think that comes with reflection, and it comes from a couple of different other areas that you can do that. Personal growth. When you talk about, if you made a correlation that losing your mojo is tied into burnout, well, personal growth is the best way to recover from that burnout. So what are you doing? What are you doing to try to better yourself or improve? What are you reading? Who are you hanging out with? What are you filling your head with? Uh, that can have an impact too.
That's true, right? So the second thing that I would say about keeping your mojo is, and this is like, I think if I were to list them, like, you got your ones. I don't think there's one, two, three, four, five. I think they're all ones. Like, you gotta, you can't say four's more important or less important than one. These
No,
are all
different reasons
important.
and different seasons.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, definitely. When I'm talking about what shapes your mojo, right?
Yeah, of
So I
course.
think this one's extremely important. You got to maintain belief in yourself. There is no substitution in leadership for believing in yourself. You can fake you can fake it till you make it all you want, but bottom line is, if you don't believe in yourself, that is going to be found out quicker than you might think. And that strong belief in yourself should make you want to do what I think is the key to leadership in terms of motivation and momentum. Number one, believe in yourself. Number two, finding someone to believe in you. Those two key components are the absolute elixir, the magic mojo stuff of leadership, for sure. Because when you have that, it really matters. But sometimes when we get into these tough situations, whoever it is we're dealing with, the first thing they will attack is our belief in ourself. That's some Art of War, Sun Tzu stuff. If I can get you to doubt yourself, I got you. And so that belief in yourself is a major mojo component.
Yeah, 100%. I'm smiling over here listening to you speak because I actually have written down what you're talking about. Uh, Not only having somebody, what I found, the benefit of having a check sixer, of having a good friend, somebody that you can really pour yourself out in front of, and share your thoughts. What you're probably going to find is, as bad as you think it is, it's probably not as bad as you think it is. When you think the sky is falling, you got a good check sixer. They're going to give you some honest feedback that, hey, I think that there's some room for improvement here, but it's not that bad. And there's other times when it may not be as good as you think it is, and they can call you out on that a little bit too. So yeah, definitely having a check sixer. Talk about what we're reading later, but I was just rereading a book with Mel Robbins, the Let Them Theory, and what tons of people have written and talked about this at length. But the image that you have of yourself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you don't think that you can do it, if you don't think that you're a good leader, or you're fighting that imposter syndrome, you've got to find ways to get past that, because people will see through you. There's no such thing as fake it till you make it in leadership. People will see right through that, and you are losing credibility that you haven't even gained yet. So couldn't agree more. You have to find a way to believe in yourself. Start the visualization process. Not getting all spacey out here, but it's meditating. It's envisioning you doing whatever task is ahead well, and then that starts coming to fruition. and then a good check sixer for sure. Great points.
You talk about meditation, and I have to kind of laugh. I wish I could understand what that is and do it. I just can't do it. I've tried it. My brain is so squirrely at times of running around, meditating. It's God bless the people that can do it, but you make a very valid point. People who can do it, it so impacts them in a positive way.
And I think it's there's a lot of interpretation to how you define what meditation is. So, like you, I talk a million miles an hour. I have ADD. For me, it's just slowing myself down enough to try to quiet my thoughts and relax. But it's when I look at meditating and visualizing things, it's almost like you look at the Olympics coming up. When you start watching the Olympics in Italy, the downhill skiers, they're going to be on top of the mountain with their headphones on, and they're going to be skiing that run before they even do it in their head. And it's a practice run that they know the mountain well enough at that point that they can do this. But it's getting repetitions in before going out and doing it. So for me, meditating, I'm not doing the whole chai chi with candles burning. It's sitting down. It's in quiet reflection is probably a better description than
Yeah, I got you.
Meditating.
And I do mine in the car. People, I mean, that sounds crazy, but I ain't closing my eyes and meditate
Yeah,
when
I
I'm
was gonna say, don't
driving.
close your eyes.
No, I'm thinking driving forward. So the next thing that really helps you with Mojo is, I think, is when we talked about one thing that's a Mojo killer is hanging with negative people. But I think that in order to keep your Mojo or to get it or to regain it is you have to be positive. You have to find a way to see the next step. That is one of the most difficult things in the world if you're in that mode. I can remember my dad passed away, and you know how close my dad and I were. And he was a cop, and he used to travel with me, and we talked every week and all that stuff. And I remember sitting in a car thinking, I don't think I'll ever laugh again. I don't think I'll ever smile again. Does that make sense? And in that grieving process or in that process of loss, I was like, I don't want to smile again. I don't want to laugh again. You know what I mean? Like I was, how your heart's broke. And I was like, that, but I had to find a way to be positive. So how did I do it? I looked at his pictures and he's in the military. We heard stories about him. We talked about him. I did the eulogy at his funeral. All those things came into play, but it was a way of me finding a way to be positive. And I've done the same thing in almost every area of my life where I've been disappointed is I've tried to remain positive. It's like, all right, I get it. We just lost that, but let's don't lose two in a row. Does that make sense? It's like, it's like playing a double header, in baseball. Okay, you lose the first one, now get your head out of your tail and let's win the next one. It's kind of like don't swing and miss twice. It's being positive.
100%. Just because you lost a battle doesn't mean you're going to lose the war. Uh, down here in Florida, we play a bunch of golf. If you have a crappy hole, you got to look at each hole as an individual game. Let that one go and go on to the next one. Well, sometimes after I have like a whole bunch of them in a row bad, well, it is what it is. But
Well, you know how golf is. You can hit one good shot and be positive and come back the next day, right?
my dad used to tell me that too. It only takes one good shot each round to bring you back, and there's some truth to that as well, for sure.
And not sharing our personal conversations, but you and I have had a lot over the years of personal conversations. And I can remember, it's kind of funny. We don't do this on purpose, but it's kind of funny. We do it on purpose. So you and I will discuss everything that's gone wrong. And then we'll be like, all right, we got that out of our system. Now, what's the good in this? I mean, we don't play it like that, but it plays out like that. Does that,
Yeah, sure.
and it's like we just gain strength from that. We're like, okay, this is what happened, but now in the reality of it, how do we make the best of what we got? It's kind of funny, but it's kind of like I never hang up the phone talking to you feeling worse than I did when I got on the phone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? It's like being positive. And I'm going to say this, and I know people are going to kind of laugh at this, and I don't want you to think badly of me. But sometimes you have friends that have life way worse than yours. And so when you're going through a lot, you call them. you call
some
them.
truth to that. You hung up the duty belt a while ago, so you don't have some of the same problems.
But you call them because their life is way worse than yours. And when you hang up, you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not going through that, And I know that's a little bit funny, but the truth is it's so true, you know.
It's so true, but that's a great example though of things don't always go well. And you
Uh-huh.
alluded before that we got a great coaching and mentoring relationship, more than a friend and a brother. But when I've called you dealing with professional situations happening, that's the check sixer I was talking about. Because you'll take the time to be like, whoa, 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 whoa. One thing you always say to me, and I've stolen this from you. Are you going to play? You want to play the short game, or you want to play the long game? Well, because I'm in it in that minute, I'm in the thick of it. I didn't even realize that there's a short game and a long game. So that's the value that some of our relationship has there. Where when I talk about, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. The check sixer that's going to bring you back to where you need to be. That's a perfect example of it because you can talk me off the edge a little bit. We'll laugh a little bit, and then I'll hang up and be like, okay, cool. Now I can hit that phone call was my reset. Now I know what direction I need to step off in. And most importantly, I'm stepping off in a direction and I'm not still there kind of spinning my tires.
Yeah, it's like you just got to find a way to be positive, right? I mean, and it really is
Yeah.
not. It's not ever easy. I know being
No, but it's a
positive.
choice.
Oh my gosh, and I love that. It is a choice, right? But it don't feel like a choice in the moment. It feels
No, and
like
I
a
think
mandate to be negative. So the next thing I want to talk about is finding, and this really helps you with your mojo. It really helps me keep my mojo. Is finding something worth chasing. And I've one of the I will not get this word for word in terms of quote, but this is what Abraham Lincoln said, and I thought it was the one of the greatest quotes I'd ever heard in my life. Is Abraham Lincoln said, they asked him about, how did he stay focused? How did he lost like 4 elections. He wasn't thought of as being really smart. He was not a very good looking character, so he didn't have all the physical traits that a lot of people do. And they asked him, he was talking about, how'd you keep going? And he said, one of the things you have to do in life is you have to find pursuits that are worthy of your ambition. And I thought, that is such an important point. Find something that you are chasing that is worthy of your ambition. Find that pursuit that, and he eventually became the president of the United States, but the point was he chased something that he knew was worthy, and it helped him through all the difficult times. It helped him through everything that he was doing and everything he was dealing with. But if you're going to keep your mojo, be on the course of something that's worthy to chase. If you'll do that, your mojo will stay there. It's like leading a team. I know that you were the former canine leader at Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. People do not realize you had like 65 dogs. That is an extremely big canine unit. But canine handlers are really hard to deal with. They're just, and if you don't know this out there, they just got this self-starter mode they think they got, and their partnership with the dog, they are fabulous for an organization, but they're very opinionated. They're very strong personalities. They have to prove they're the alpha all the time with the dog. So in every conversation, they're competing for the alpha. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but man, you fought that battle for a good while.
Yeah, 6.5 years. But what I'll also say to complement what you're saying is, in addition to all of those things, you won't find a more passionate group of people for what they're doing. And they are fantastic for the organization. But when you walk into a room and you got to become the alpha of the alphas, that could be quite intimidating and honestly, it's draining. It can be exhausting. You got to constantly fill your tank back up. But there were many times in that 6+ year journey that I lost my mojo. One of the ways getting back to it to what you're talking about now is, know your purpose and really be connected with asking myself, why did I take this job? Why did I want to be a police officer? Why do I want to have a leadership role in the police department or the sheriff's office? And getting back to basics and really understanding what you're hoping and trying to accomplish will pull you out of those moments when you lose your mojo.
I mean, 100% there for sure. And just find you something that you can shake your head to, this is worth it. And that's very important in keeping your mojo for sure. So the last one I want to talk about in terms of mojo, before we talk about some of the things we're reading, is in order to constantly keep your mojo, you have to use failure as a learning point. You can't use failure as a failing point. You have to use it as a learning point. So I heard someone say, you see all these reels now in videos or what out there, and I heard someone say, I don't have failures, I have learning opportunities. And I thought, man, that's true. You don't feel it in the minute. You don't feel like it's a learning opportunity. You don't feel like it's a moment where you can reflect and say, good God, I'm glad this happened so I could fail. You look at it and you're like, all right, I won't do that again, or I need to figure out how to get away from that again, Use your failures as points to learn. And I think as you do that, your self-discovery becomes really a key part of who you are.
Yeah, I would just add to that, how do we learn anything? It's by failing. And we don't look at it from that context usually. But when you have a newborn baby and the baby starts crawling and then it's going to try to walk, it doesn't just get up and walk. It makes a bunch of mistakes and makes those corrections. In my humble opinion, one of the best things a leader can do for their organization and their culture is create an atmosphere where you can take calculated risk and you can make mistakes and be okay with that. Now, you can't continue to make the same mistake over and over without learning. There's also, high priority critical incidents that probably aren't the times to take chances on some things. But in the book, The Leadership Challenge, they talk about the mantra of try, fail, learn. Try new things, get out of your comfort zone, be growing, be going. Try these new things and figure out what works and what doesn't, and then adjust your strategy using what works and continue to go forward. What didn't work, we drop that off and we don't do that anymore. But what I think is happening across the country and not just in law enforcement is people are really risk adverse or adverse to taking risk. They don't want to take any risk. They think that they want everything to go well. But the truth is you're going to make mistakes, either professionally or in your own personal growth journey. You're going to make mistakes. What are you going to do about it? You learn from it. Don't do that again and stay positive.
Oh, I mean, totally agree. The one thing that I find extremely important with maintaining your mojo is take ownership of what you're doing. There is no substitution for owning what you're doing. And a lot of people don't do that. They give their ownership up to someone else. They think ownership just simply means tending to the garden when it hasn't rained. But the reality is a garden needs tending all the time, not just when it hasn't rained. And ownership is just out there making sure every single detail, making sure every single thing that needs to be done is done. It's owning it. And I think that, for me, helps me with my mojo is I'm going to take ownership of what I'm doing. So, closing thoughts on mojo, JP?
No, I think you're spot on. When you have it, you know it. When you don't, you know it. I think the biggest thing is to stay humble, take a step back, realize it's not always going to be perfect, but get intentional, come up with the plan, stay positive, and make it happen.
And mojo is not arrogance. That's for sure. Mojo is just that inner feeling of success, like when you do a good speech or you get in front of people. Like every time you'd have a canine meeting, you would know it. That would you walk out there with your mojo? Did you have it intact? Same thing with me. You get in front of a classroom, you're doing leadership, owning 2 businesses now. I understand mojo and I understand the importance of it. And so it's extremely important. So JP, I thank you for spending this time with us. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you about, I always like to ask my guests, what are you reading? What are you paying attention to? What's going on in your life? I'm going to share a couple myself, but what you got?
I got three things. Kind of excited about this. So, leaders are readers. We talk about that in the classroom. I'm always trying to see different perspectives and continue to grow myself. This is a leadership journey. There's no summit I can plant the flag and say I made it. So I'm always trying to learn things. One book that I read a while ago, actually, two of these books I've already read, uh, but they're worth coming back to. I mentioned it earlier, The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. This is a book that I would not normally have picked up. It's not a book you're going to see a whole bunch of cops probably carrying around in a patrol car with them. But when I was losing, at times that I may have lost my mojo, at times when I would have frustrations, uh, I had some self doubt. I read this. This was the right book at the right time. And why I'm rereading it is there's just so many great nuggets in there as far as what you're able to control. And we talked about this earlier on that you can only really control one thing, and that's yourself. You're not in control of other people, but what you are in control of is how you react to other people and situations. So that book has been literally a life-changing book for me. The second book that I am rereading is by Robin Sharma, The 5 a.m. Club. You and I have talked about that before, Dean. One of your smart aleck comments to me was, "Well, are you following it?" And the truth is, most days, not every day. Someday I'm human and I want to sleep in. I work a 12-hour shift starting early in the morning. So when I'm not working, I like to not get up at 5 a.m.
Do you notice,
Uh,
everybody in the audience notice what JP's doing right now? He's making an excuse for why he doesn't do it. So that's why I always ask him, are you doing it? So,
yeah. So no, but there's a lot of good nuggets in there about it's a story. There's a good story woven through there, and there's some just timeless pieces of advice in there. And then the third book I just picked up. It's from 2019. It's by a guy. Yates wrote this, The Courageous Police Leader, and it's been on my bookshelf for a couple of years now. And I just picked it up recently, started thumbing through it, and it reminded me a lot of a book by Heather McDonald called The War on Cops. And with everything going on with the ICE agents and uh, the way that media has been operating with bias confirmation, this book is really interesting because this book was written before all this stuff happened, but post Ferguson. And it's got some pretty good universal truths about what we as leaders in law enforcement can and should be doing. So I'd recommend taking a look at that, The Courageous Police Leader. Those are my three.
those are awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing those. I think, you know, a comment I have about the ICE agent is that ICE is designed to do immigration, not some of the things they're doing, traffic control, roadblocks, riot control, whatever. Police departments have done that for years. What ICE is learning right now is that when you don't do those every day, there are going to be circumstances that you're going to come into that are going to expose you, and they're going to expose those weaknesses.
Oh, for
And
sure.
and I think that's what some of the leaders in ICE are failing to recognize is they're putting those agents in situations where they aren't trained for them. They really don't understand them. They don't do them every day. Therefore, their policies are fast developing in front of them in a nation who is paying attention to everything you're doing. That is a very, very difficult circumstance to put those ICE agents in. And I just think that their leaders need to recognize, stay in your lane, do the things that are very important. But the reality of that is when you put yourself into those circumstances like that shooting, uh, 99% of the police departments across the country have already dealt with those issues and have very strict guidelines and policies on what to do and what not to do. And whether who's right or wrong, it's just when you're putting cops in situations they have very little experience in, you get what you get.
The great thing about the book is it has a lot of insight and information, not just about particular situations, but uh, really understanding the big picture and then supporting the big picture and not going wherever the political winds go. And he does a great job. The author does a great job dispelling a lot of myths that people have, and then the bias confirmation that comes along with a perceived idea that you know what you're talking about, or you know the situation, when even people with 30 years of law enforcement experience weren't there at the time, and it's really tough to judge right,
Right.
wrong, or indifferent off a 3-second video that's been slowed down to slow motion to show a tiny portion of it. So,
Yep.
no, interesting, just an interesting read, very interesting read.
All right, good stuff, man. Listen, I'm reading a book currently. I'll hold it up here. It's called Wisdom of the Bullfrog. It's from Admiral Craven. It's just got some good things in there. I think one of the best quotes in that book is in the first of it when he says he visits West Point as an admiral and he gets a chance to speak to the West Point cadets. And one of the things that he finds that the West Point creed or the West Point thing that they follow is certainly duty, honor, country. But the one that he said that is very admirable to understand with leadership, he says, when you become a leader, you make a decision to lead above the common life. And I think that is so true. When you become a leader, you decide to have an uncommon life. You can't be common anymore and be a leader. You have to do what others won't do. You have to step your game up when others don't want to do it. You got to stand for what's right. You're going to struggle. You're going to have pain. And it's really just, it's a good book. Why they call him the Bullfrogs? Because he's the oldest serving Navy SEAL. Every Navy SEAL that's the oldest in the military, they always call him the Bullfrog. So that's what he was at the time he wrote the book. So I really appreciate that, JP. Hope everybody picks that up. And also, I got another book here that's going to be a bestseller. It's called 5 Simple Truths of Leadership. I've got a copy somewhere here. It's written by Dean Crisp. It's pretty good. If you get a chance to pick that up. JP, thanks for joining us today. I really have always loved our conversations. And best to you, and congratulations on being promoted to captain. Well deserved, my friend. And go out there and change those lives. Folks, really enjoyed our podcast. Thank you for joining Straight Talk on Leadership, the No BS Zone. Really enjoyed it. JP, again, thank you. And as we always say, until next time, I'm Dean Crisp.
You've been listening to Straight Talk on Leadership with Dean Crisp. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share your favorite podcast. And if you get a chance, leave us a review. It helps us reach more leaders. Learn more about Dean, his books, our classes, and the Significant Leader Program at lhln.org. Until next time, put your leadership into action every day.